opportunity to ask questions. We're just folks. And because there is many different implications and applications of what I have experienced and what I share with people these days, as there are people sitting in this room. One of the things we do provide as a service in our company, we have a small company based in Ojai, California. I live in Santa Barbara. But we do work really all over the world. And a lot of the DNA of what created this was just one-on-one. I didn't call it coaching back then. This was consulting. When I began a consulting practice back in 1981. Yeah. After 35 professions, by the time you're 35, it's either consultant or flake. Those are your two options. That's the fork in the road. I took, hopefully, the positive route, although most people would say, those are somewhat synonymous. So I decided to just take all that experience that I had, because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I still don't. But I did find something that would keep me, keep me engaged with stuff that was producing value for people until I found out what I really wanted to do. So I thought, well, that's cool. When I started to do this, I was just taking stuff that I was using for myself, and I also have always been interested in models and how a way to think about something, wasn't about being smarter, but if I used a thought process to walk into a meeting with certain questions in my mind, certain ways to think about what was going to happen, I produced a different result. So I've always been fascinated in the larger scheme. If we really want to back this up, from the time I can remember, I've always been fascinated by how the invisible affects the visible. There are things that none of us can see physically that are affecting who you are, where you are, what you're thinking right now, what your life is like, where you're going. So I figured if I could find what that is and get a hold of that, I could be really lazy. So one of the things I say is I'm pretty good at actually practicing what I teach. And the main reason is I'm the laziest guy you've ever met. And I'll stand toe-to-toe with any of you. No, come on. Can we hear it for lazy guys? Come on.
Finally.
The wicked coolest thing we're creating all lazy people who actually wanted to get something done with less effort and more class, ease, and elegance, right? End of story. And some of you are burning out because you're so lazy, trying to build something that will help people be lazier. Isn't that strange?
Amen.
You know, we're the hardest working people you ever met about how to not work hard. That's why my stuff hit a nerve in the tech community, because that's kind of how the tech community is wired. So, anyway, don't want to lose track of my thread here. So the one-on-one stuff that I was doing, our one-on-one coaching that we now do, it was originally, a lot of the DNA of this was working with a mentor of mine that I ran across back in 79, 80, 81, was a guy who had spent his career developing a way to align organizations. He had an organizational alignment program. And he had uncovered some stuff that was really critical in that process of how do you get an organization aligned. One of the biggest problems was you go into an organization with a lot of old business, psychologically, physically, open loops, things built around, and try to move people into a new vision, and it was like trying to move quicksand. You'd sit down with people to try to do vision stuff and nobody was there. They were all wired up in the last 3 weeks of stuff that piled up on them that they weren't managing. So their attention was being held hostage by stuff. So he taught me about unloading everything out of your head and then making next action decisions about every one of those. Because he watched how transformative that was when he was sitting down with the CEO to actually get them unstuck. By the way, parentheses, I've never worked with a senior, and I've worked with some of the best and brightest people on the planet. I've never worked with a very, very senior executive that was not the bottleneck for at least 6 key things because they were avoiding the next action decision. Never seen an exception. So I watched, so that was all about how do you prepare an organization to get ready to change. The truth is actually once you did that, 90% of the presenting issues were solved. So I watched this little thing, and I said, yeah, it's fascinating. I thought I had my shit together. And he actually grabbed me and walked me through this process that he designed. And I watched this transform my ability to suddenly feel more on top of it, more in control, more highly focused on what was going on. So I said, yeah, that's cool. This is good stuff. So just in and of itself, that started to become a core of something I began to play with, to say, what are these best practices? And we all know them. Actually, I didn't make up anything. GTD is not like some new foreign language or some new technology. This is just advanced common sense, and you actually all do all the behaviors. Very few people do them consistently. Very few people do them completely. And it's game-changing when you do that. Whole paradigm shift. Well, let me ask you, how many of you at some point felt at least slightly overwhelmed and confused and sat down and made a list and felt at least a little bit better? Excuse me, you smart people, if you reverse engineered how come that happened, you never keep anything in your head the rest of your life. Nothing changed in your world, and you're now more focused. How many of you would love to feel more in control and more focused on a consistent basis? And why do you keep stuff in your head? Didn't you learn? It's just most people have to feel really, really bad before they do a little bit of something. It makes them feel a little bit better. Whew, wow, I feel a little bit better. And then you keep sucking stuff back up in your head. I discovered once you externalize anything that's potentially meaningful, you step back and look at it, you're going to feel more in control and more focused about it. You might not like what's on there, but at least you got your hand on the helm as opposed to having it, hold you hostage. Duh. So I don't keep anything in my head. That would be evident here, if not already. Actually, there's stuff going on. It's like, this is going on. Not that. Could it be? Yeah, I'm buried. Man, I got, oh, shoot, you should see all, you're lovely folks, but you're one small operational detail in my life. Well, I'm an extra in your play, too. But how many have already had your mind go somewhere else that had absolutely nothing to do with what I've been talking about, only for a couple of minutes? Anybody have your mind go? Now, by the way, where your mind went was doing creative developmental thinking down track your brain has never been before that was adding value to what you were thinking about. I go, dude, stay there. Don't pay any attention to me. That's not where you guys went. Where'd you go? You went to something that was holding your attention hostage. You went to something that you have not optimally managed. So I just figured out what was the algorithm to be able to shut that up. Anybody have anything on your mind, by the way? Anybody have any strategic and important stuff on your mind? Guess what? Inverse relationship between on your mind and getting done. So if I walked into your companies or to any of you personally right now and say, what's got your attention? Because whatever has is not on cruise control. That's why it has your attention. Because every one of you has strategic and important things that are not on your mind. Why? Because some part of you feels and knows, at least intuitively, that you've made the appropriate decisions about it and parked the results into a trusted systemic process that you trust will trigger the right things, the right review at the right time. That's all. Didn't finish any of it. You don't have to like any of it. You don't have to like your life to get it off your mind, by the way. Anyway, so that's all I did was I just began to uncover what are these principles that underlie how we get more ability to be free. I'm a freedom guy. By the way, I'm not naturally organized. A lot of people think of my stuff as organization. A lot of people, to get more stuff done, need to get more disorganized. A lot of people use organization and overstructure as a way to avoid taking risk and setting vision and reaching out and, and stretching in ways that they really need to. It's just that most people have way overcommitted, so the organization piece is the big weak suit, for most, young creative folks. Way over. Most people have no clue how many things you've committed to internally. And some part of you hasn't forgotten any of it. Buy cat food. Get a life. Find God. Lose weight. Get a real relationship. Just start to pay attention to what has your attention, and you'll find out that's all. I don't have to go very far. If you want to implement this, you don't have to go very far at all. It's right here, it's right in your mind. So start to pay attention to what's there. So anyway, I sort of fast forwarded. I'm going to hop around. I hope that's okay, just based upon as it shows up here for me. So that's how I started to work with this stuff, and then began to explore it. And I saw that as I began to accumulate these best practices, and then sit down with people, and these were entrepreneurs and mostly I started with people in my own network who were building have their own companies or whatever, trying to get to work wherever I could. I used my own network for that, and I watched every time I would then start to do these processes, people go, wow, oh, they're fabulous, and the lights would go on, and the epiphanies, and they start to feel more control. I said, good stuff. So this seemed to work. So I began to put together that model